Imagine a tree standing in the middle of a storm. The winds are fierce, its branches sway violently, but its roots remain intact, firmly planted in the ground. That tree does not resist the wind. It allows it to pass, and that's why it survives. How many times in your daily life do you feel the need to react, to defend yourself, to explain, to argue, as if every word you say could determine whether you win or lose? We live in a noisy world where social media constantly pushes us to respond to everything, to prove who we are. But just like the tree in the storm, sometimes true strength lies in letting things pass, in choosing silence. What about you? When was the last time you chose silence instead of confrontation? When did you allow the wind to pass without breaking your branches? Think about simple situations. Someone at work criticizes you unfairly. Your first reaction might be to defend yourself, to prove you're right. But what if you just looked at that person and let the silence speak for you? Or in a relationship, when a friend or partner says something hurtful. Instead of reacting, you take a deep breath and choose not to respond. How does that change the dynamic? Today, we're exploring the power of not reacting. We'll understand why silence is a powerful tool and how cutting away the excess in our lives can set us free. In a small village, there was a young man known for being impulsive. Whenever someone provoked him, he would immediately react by yelling or arguing. One day he decided to visit a wise man who lived in the mountains. "Why do I always feel like I'm at war with everyone?" the young man asked, frustrated. The wise man, sitting peacefully, simply smiled and said, "Tomorrow, come back with a cup filled with water." The next day the young man brought the cup. The wise man asked him to hold it as he poured more water into it. The liquid began to overflow. "It's spilling," the young man exclaimed. The wise man replied, "This is exactly how you're living. When your emotions are overflowing, even a single drop will cause you to react. There's no space for silence." This was a powerful lesson. Reacting often reflects an overwhelmed inner world. On his way down the mountain, the young man encountered a well-known troublemaker from the village. The man started hurling insults, expecting a reaction. This time, the young man remembered the wise man's words and remained silent. The troublemaker, confused, gave up and walked away. When the young man returned to the wise man, he said, "It was hard, but I managed not to react. I felt something change inside me." The wise man replied, "When you don't feed the fire, it dies on its own." This experience taught the young man that silence can disarm conflicts and set us free. Like the young man, we all carry a cup full of emotions. Reacting is often the overflow of our own inner turmoil. But when we choose silence, we create space to understand and eventually release those emotions. In a noisy world where everything seems to demand a response, silence becomes a revolutionary choice. When you choose silence instead of reacting, something magical happens. You reclaim control. Think about everyday situations. Imagine you're in traffic and someone cuts you off. Your immediate reaction might be to honk or yell. But what do you really gain by reacting? Reacting is like pouring gasoline on a fire. Your emotional energy is often spent on something that doesn't solve the problem, but only makes it worse. Take a breath before responding. Literally. Breathe in for 3 seconds, hold it for 2, and exhale. This simple act creates a moment of pause between the stimulus and your reaction. Now, consider the impact of social media. Many times we are provoked online. A negative comment or a harsh critique challenges us to prove we're right. But remember, when you respond to an online attack, you're playing the game of the one provoking you. Choosing silence creates a pause. The attacker loses their strength because there's no reaction to fuel the argument. Before responding to something online, wait 24 hours. Ask yourself, will this still matter tomorrow? Silence also helps us uncover hidden emotions. Imagine a lake. When the wind blows, the surface becomes agitated, but the deep waters remain calm. Emotions are like the surface wind, temporary. At work, for instance, your boss gives you harsh feedback. Your immediate reaction might be anger or sadness, but these emotions often reflect something deeper, perhaps a fear of not being good enough. When you recognize this, you can handle your emotions with greater clarity and maturity. Write down your emotions on paper. Ask yourself, where is this coming from? This practice helps you gain clarity instead of acting impulsively. Finally, silence can be a powerful act of strength in itself. In a toxic relationship, trying to argue or change the other person can feel like pouring water into a leaky bucket. Choosing silence, cutting communication, can be an act of self-love. Evaluate your relationships. Ask yourself, does this connection strengthen or drain me? If it's the latter, perhaps it's time to step away, quietly. When we choose silence, we connect with profound philosophical teachings. The ego, for instance, is one of the main sources of reaction. It makes us believe we need to defend ourselves at all costs. But in truth, the ego is just a mask. When we remove that mask, we realize we don't need to react to protect something that isn't essential. Nothing is permanent, not suffering, not joy, not conflict. Impermanence reminds us that everything passes. And when we embrace that, we find peace. Remember the tree in the storm. It does not resist the wind, it allows it to pass. And because of that, it remains standing. In what areas of your life are you reacting more than necessary? What would happen if you chose silence instead? Now it's up to you. Why not try just for one day the power of silence? Choose a situation where you would normally react and, this time, let it go. Observe what changes, both inside you and around you. Share your experience in the comments. What was the impact of not reacting? I'd love to hear how this practice transformed your day. The wise man teaches us that strength lies not in noise, but in quietude. That silence is not the absence of action, but the presence of wisdom. And that when we choose silence, we are choosing peace within ourselves and in the world around us. Thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs this message. See you in the next lesson from the Wise Man.